Oh, TYU Tucker, I didn't know that I had the mic muted this entire time. That's not helpful at all. It'd be a pretty boring video that I upload to YouTube. Oh well. Basically, I'm just running through rotation code at the minute. Right, so need to make sure that the origin is updated correctly. So let's say we rotate this round. We'd end up with a shape looking not like that, but like this. So what would update here? So we've got the x-axis actually would change. Need to work out what it would change to. So it would change probably to the y-axis. So let's update that. So we need a temp variable in here. Call it tempx. What did I say it was? It was the... I have the code open on the side of Paint actually, so it's a bit easier. So the x would be equal to the y in this case, so tempx would be pos 1, because that's the y position. And then we'll set that in here. There we go. So this is probably the bit of code that we're missing this entire time. I was just using an example that didn't actually test the limits of rotating stuff around. It's good that I've done this example where it's butted up against the edge just so I can see that change. And then the y-axis is the width minus the x-axis. Yeah, that's correct. That might be fine actually. So now that we've done that, I also need to work out what it is for the other way around. So I believe it would start here. And be like that. Pretty sure that's how it would be. This one, the y-axis is just inverted. Yeah, that makes sense, and the x-axis is also inverted, that's fine. Now let me try it rotating around one more time. There we go. So in this case we have, let me see, I'm pretty sure it's just the inverse of the thing that I did before, but I just want to double check. So the y-axis is equal to the x-axis. Which I think is what I did before, so yeah, I'll just put temp y in here. And then obviously do pos 0, like I did before. Well, it's the inverse of what I did before. And then we'll assign pos 1 to y. There we go. So I think this is the bit of code that we were missing. Hopefully this fixes the issues I was having, but if not, I will look to other areas of the code, because I think that should be everything. I'm sure I've forgotten to do some initialization is skipped. I find it annoying that I have to declare these outside for some reason, since they're only used in this. why it does this. Kind of annoying. Right. Put these up here. Do the same with Y. Get rid of the declaration there. Right, that should fix it. So if I actually have a look, this is now identical near enough to what I did up here. MPEX is equal to Y. Yeah. Other than case 2 maybe? Oh no, case 2 is also the same. Yeah, so now I would actually expect it to work because the implementations are the same. Although again it doesn't, so something's obviously wrong with how we're highlighting this on the editor side, I think. So how we're calculating where to place stuff on is a bit broken. Let's revisit the logic for that. Oops. Didn't mean to delete that. Right, let me actually just play this again just so I can work out roughly what's going wrong here. Is this one working? Yeah, so this one's working just fine. It's actually in the right position, which is great. Only in this direction actually that it isn't. So maybe there's something slightly wrong with my offset. So I would expect this to be all the way over here. It's actually offset by the entirety of the collision volume that it can occupy. Just give me 1 second guys, I'll be back in a moment. I just need to say goodbye. Right, I am back. Sorry about that. Just had to say goodbye to somebody. Let's. Yeah, like I was saying, it's off by the entire. I'm not sure if it's the y-axis. I think it is the y-axis. So the x-axis seems to be fine. So the y-axis code needs investigating to be in the wrong way around. I think that would be an issue in the editor. So I think that's probably just an issue with highlighting itself. Let's double check that. This seems okay. I don't think there's anything that stands out to me here as being wrong necessarily. But for some reason the combination of the two things is giving it a massive offset. So it might actually be that the code I'm using, not only does it put the origin in the wrong place, but it might also... Not sure really. Might also set the collision properties in the wrong place as well. Is we've got two competing functions. We've got getPropCollision and getPropOrigin. And I need to work out if it's them that's not working properly or if it's some of my other code. So the logic being here, we're taking the minimum position in the code, taking away the origin from that, and that should give us the location in world space. So taking a random x value, let's say this is our box. So the x value here would be 1, 1. The minimum x would be 0 in this case. So we currently have 1 plus 0 minus the origin, which is at position 1. Yeah, it would set it to there. And then for the max, we're doing something similar. So the center of that is just the min plus the max divided by 2. That's fairly standard. The width is max minus min. Yeah, that's fine. This is also okay, this is just normalizing it for world space. Yeah, nothing stands out to me here as being wrong in the other stuff, so it must be some combination of these two things. So it must be a combination of getPropCollision and getPropOrigin. I presume what's happening is these calculations aren't correct, and that's why it's being weird. So what we're doing here is updating the x and y. Let's open up my example. So get prop collision. We are literally just inverting the y-axis and inverting the x-axis. So we would be taking the maximum object width minus 1 minus x. Does make sense. Same for the y. Don't know. What happens if I remove this code? Well, maybe I should just keep on editing it until it kind of makes sense. Let's give it some test values in my head just to make sure that this is actually what I want it to do. So let's say I'm going to draw a new set of things on here. This is getting quite messy now. So I actually want it to be this instead. So originally having started down here, we want the x needs to be the max position minus whatever this is. So the max position starts off being, I believe it's 3, but we're taking 1 off of that. Well, let's imagine here the max position is 4, because that's what it is in this demo that I'm using here. To be 0, 1, 2, and 3. So we're taking the max position, which is 4, we're taking a 1 off of that to normalise it to 3, and then we're taking 1 off to get 2. So that seems like it's okay, and then it's same for the y-axis. We're taking to get the origin up there, we're taking the max, so presumably this is 4. So it'd be 0, 1, 2, 3 again. So we're taking 1 off to get 3 up here. And the origin would be oh, so it wouldn't actually be max take away. Sorry, I'm confusing myself now. So 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so the y-axis in this case is 0. In actual fact, it ends up being something different. Let's start off with this is a really difficult problem to work on. It would actually help if I rotated it around the same point though. Should have been rotated around here. Yeah, no, that actually works out fine. I'm just being stupid. So that code in and of itself is okay for the origin, but I don't know if it's the same for the prop collisions. It should be though, because we're checking against similar stuff. Since the conversion is the same. Let me double check I've actually done that down here. This is equivalent to x, this position 0 thing, this is equivalent to y. I'm confused as to why it's inverted in the wrong direction. Basically as if it's just been rotated around the wrong point, but the collision bounds are in the correct place, which is confusing. I've just realised as well I'm checking the wrong code, because this code is fine. It's actually for the 90-degree increments that isn't working properly, so I need to work out why. Let's start off with another demo. So let's take what we're actually doing so that it just makes sense. We've got... Here we go. So in this case the x would be, rather than 0, 0, would be 0, 3. Oh, thanks for the follow, Yutaka. Means a lot. I've actually hit my follower goal now, which is great, with a day to go. Thank you. I'll be continuing working on this engine over the course of the year, so I will be on here regularly. And if you look at my stream schedule, I'm here 4 days a week, possibly 5 on some weeks. So I'll definitely be up quite frequently. Once I've got past this problem, I'll be working on a few on slightly more interesting things. And if you have any questions or anything like that, or you want to see anything, just let me know and I'll take you through it. So this is kind of an awkward problem. What I have been doing is I've been inverting maybe I'm inverting it the wrong way round. Maybe instead of inverting the x and the y, I should be inverting the y and the x. Let's try something a bit different again. Let's pretend I've got the origin here instead and I'm rotating it around that point. This will probably be a bit easier to test actually. So it's 0, 1. So down here it would be 1, 0. So that's just a simple flip actually of the two numbers with each other. I know that isn't the case though for everything. So let's try... Oh, I don't know, let's try something around here instead. So that one tells me that it's a flip, but I know it isn't. So this would be 0, 3, and this would be... Oh, this would be 3, 0, and this would be 0, 3. So again, it's a flip, but I think that's because I'm doing it along the edge. Let's try it in the center. Well, the center wouldn't do anything, would it? Let's try starting off against the top edge. We'd rotate it round to here. So this would be 2, 3. This would be 3, 2. So maybe it is actually an inversion. I've just been overcomplicating it this entire time. I guess I could give that a go instead, than whatever it was I was doing before. So just swapping them around, really. So let's try... Yeah, let's just try swapping them around instead. Give that a go, see how that works. It also means updating it for up here as well, though. Sorry, for... where are we? All the way up here. Get rid of this code. Now, the origin code I know is correct, but the offset code might actually need to stay like that, so I'll just double check this first and see how this is. I'm actually thinking this won't work, so I think I've updated one too many things. Let me just double check that. So we're starting off with an arrow, kind of an arrow shape facing upwards. Now that's rotated in the wrong direction, but at least it's doing something right. And then this is... That's going in roughly the right direction. Okay, now this one's completely broken. So I've presumably forgotten to update something somewhere. But at least it's doing something right, I suppose. Just double check my code. Yeah, we're just swapping things around. I think at least the origin code's correct now. Maybe I'll revert back that change that I made up here. I think this positional stuff was actually correct before. I think it's just the origin code that needs to change. It's difficult to know what the culprit is actually, I guess. That's working. Working, and again this is broken in the same way, so I just don't think it's compiled again. Try that. Let's see what changes have been made now. It's all working bar the last one. But it is the right shape. Right, so we're taking what it should be. Yeah, I think the positions are wrong. This is correct. So I know that the highlighting code isn't wrong because this would show up incorrectly if it was the highlighting code that was at fault. It's just how I'm handling my offsets for origin and collision volumes. And then this one again is completely wrong. So the wrong... Or is it wrong actually? It might be correct, thinking about it. Oh no, because it does need to be attached still, doesn't it? It needs to be centered around the correct thing. It's really warping my brain doing this. So I'm pretty sure the origin code is correct, so I just need to work out what to do about the positional code. So let's revert it back to this simple swap that I did before and see how that affects it. What I'd need ideally is bigger collision boxes so I can test more. I might do that next. And then I can see exactly how it's being affected. What I'll do is I'll just work through each shape type and try and work out manually where it should be, and then I'll do a calculation based on that. So rather in this case than the x being 2, it needs to be 0. Although the other part of the code is correct. What I need to do really is take a massive shape and crunch loads of numbers on it and see if I can settle on a calculation that works, but it means doing a bigger grid, so you'll have to bear with me while I work on this. It's going to be a mess, but at least we'll get something done. I should probably be using a better tool, to be honest. In fact, yeah, rather than doing this, because since all we're doing is grids, I will get a drawer up. Virtual online graph paper, here we go, this is the kind of thing I need. Can I change its dimensions? Apparently not. Let's pretend each one of these grid spaces, these tiny ones, is a voxel position. We have a massive shape here, which is 5 by 5. Let's pretend this bit's filled in, this bit's filled in. Up here's filled in. and this is the origin point. So if we were to do a rotation, it would end up looking, I'll do another one separately over here just so that I'm not cluttering up the same space. Sorry for all the dinging, by the way. So if anyone sees anything that's wrong, obviously correct me, but I think, let me just mute this chat quickly, sorry. There we go. So this one's filled in. We'll do it in 2 stages, obviously. We'll work out what the origin should be, and then we'll work out what the collision boxes should be as well. I think this is correct, just by looking at it. I'm pretty sure I've done that correctly. Yeah. Okay, so in this case, what we're doing is, I think we are literally just swapping the X and the Y. Or am I completely wrong about that? No, I'm not. So, sorry, I am, yeah, I am completely wrong about that. So what we're doing is we're taking position, I wish I could, I guess I can do this, 0, 2, and we're translating it to 3, 5. So we're taking away the opposite coordinate from the maximum. So let's go back to the origin. Where am I? Here we go. So temp x would be max object width minus 1 minus position. Temp y would be again the same thing. Oops. And I presume it's the same for the other way around. Let me just double check. Well, sorry, it won't be the same, but it will be similar at least. What thing have I got to open in? There we go. Let's again draw shape. Origin would be over. Oop, don't need to do that for both. It's this one. Bear with me just while I figure out how to trace this. Pretty sure this is correct. And then there's one more in there, which is here. And then this one would just be the rotation of that, so I probably should have done this from the start, to be honest, be a bit more thorough. But yeah, let's work through it. So let's pretend we rotate this round again. What is this? So that's 5, 3. That's the same thing, just taken away from the edge. So yeah, that's what we've done actually, which is fine. And then this one is this should be 2. Oh wait, sorry, this won't be 5, 3. This would be 5, 2. And in fact, it wouldn't be 5. It'd be 4. Oops. It's just made another text box over the top. It has. That's annoying. 4, 2. This one would be 2, 0. This gets even more complicated, so I don't even know if this works for all cases. Possibly, possibly not. I'll also do some test boxes as well to test my logic, but just with the origin, so I'm not repeating myself over and over again. So let's do a test one here. Translate to there. And then again would translate it to here. And lastly up here. Sorry, not up there. I've done those completely wrong. Here. Then here. Then here. Right, I think that's correct. So we start off with 3, 3. We end up with... That's not 3, 3, what am I on about? 1, 3. Then we end up with 3, 3. Then 3, 1. Then 1, 1. It's a bit more complicated, so I put the wrong coordinates in for some of these. I'll figure it out. I need to find what the similarities are between both, basically. What I'm thinking for the rotation to 90 degrees is that this is just the x-axis. And then this is the maximum, sorry, this is just the y-axis. The x for this one is the y-axis, and then this is the the max width minus the x-axis, I think. And then let's test it down here. So the x is the y-axis, and then the y is the width minus the x-axis. I think that works. So let's now translate that into actual code. This is the origin code. So the x needs to be the y. And then the y needs to be the x, yeah, the width minus the x, that's fine. And then I need to translate this down into this case here, so y needs to be the x, and then the x needs to be max I think. Let me just double check this works. So the y needs to be the x. And oh wait, no, that's inverted. This is what I would assume it would be. So let's run off of this assumption for now. We will test it. I'll compile quickly. That's fine. Not fine. But to be fair, it might be the other code that's broken, so we'll give it the benefit of the doubt for now. Where is it? There we go. I guess we could take a bunch of random points in here as well and test that too. So let's take this box here. So it starts off at 1, 0. then is translated to 0, 3. It's then translated to 3, 4. Which is then translated to 4, 1. Okay, so this is not really that helpful, but I'll try and figure out what's going on here. Let's work off of my original assumption. So this is y. Seems okay. And then this is max minus x, which again seems okay. This one I think is max minus both. Yeah, max minus x, max minus y, that's fine. And then this one is a bit more of a problem. This one is y. Sorry, y. Yeah, y is equal to the x, and x is equal to the max minus the y. Yeah, so actually that's fine. Now let's update the code up here to reflect these changes, because I haven't done so yet. And hopefully this should fix everything. Now that I've got this updated code, hopefully we should see some kind of improvement. Because obviously this code is wrong, so I haven't updated it yet. And same down here. Also notice we're using the wrong variables. Temp y. This might have been why it's so fucked actually, so I didn't update these properly. Here we go. Also these variables need updating. This needs to be y equals x. X equals that, then y equals temp y. There we go, so I think I've actually updated all of this properly now. Hopefully I have. I've made changes to the way that I was assigning variables in the first bit so that it's in line with the origin code. Because I hadn't remembered to update my variables previously, so hopefully this works. Well, it's closer at least. Let me double check this. So and this one I can't even find. There we go. Seems like they might be the wrong way around for the origin. Let's have a look. So the collision we're starting off with Tempex. Origin we're starting off with Tempex. We're close, we're definitely close. It's definitely like more in line with what it should be. We're just not quite there yet. I'm going to move this down towards the bottom just so that I can access it slightly easier and I can see them next to each other. There we go. Right, just so that I can have a quick mental refresher and just so that I can get a drink and everything, I'm just going to take a quick break. So just put a little note up on screen. There we go. Just so anyone else joining knows what's going on. This is a problem I did not expect to be taking this long to solve, I'm not going to lie. So I apologise for how long it's taken me to get through. I'm sure I'll fix it eventually. So yeah, I'll just leave that up. I'll be back in a second. Right, there we go, I'm back. Just had to talk to somebody quickly, so that's why I'm a bit behind. Where are we at? So basically, I need to work out how to convert properly between my rotations to the stored data points that I have here. So I need to work out where the issue is, what logic is wrong basically, and how to fix it. Right, I'm going to make a big L shape because I actually want it to be a bit more obvious what's going on. Because right now it's hard to tell. I don't know if things are being oriented correctly right now, just because they might be getting reversed and I don't know about it. So what I'm going to do is change this to be 2. So rather than a T shape, I'm making an L shape, which removes one kind of variable in that I can check what axis it's actually being rotated to and whether or not that's correct. Okay, so we'll take this shape to begin with. So that's fine. Then this one, this rotated correctly. Yeah, so this is actually rotated fine. That's good. Again, this is rotated correctly, I believe. That's all good, and then this you'd expect to hook around this way. Yeah, so this is actually correct. So what seems to be happening is when I'm comparing the two, there seems to be some degree of issue here. So it's technically, I don't think it's actually factoring in where the origin is properly. It does for this one, which is great. Like in this case, for instance, it's putting the origin in the wrong corner, and I need to work out why. I suspect it's not actually to do with the code itself. I think it's how I'm calculating around it. So I'm going to look further into that. One thing I guess I could do is have some additional debugging highlights. Would be helpful. put some extra debugging highlights into here. One thing I could actually do is simplify this process somewhat and make it so that the origin is always on the center, now that I've reduced stuff down to a cube, but I don't know if that would be alright. Because originally I was planning on making it so that you could have different length objects in different directions, or at least have things that occupy different sizes, but I guess it simplifies the process significantly if stuff's always at center. But then it does introduce the problem of, let's say I want an object that is placed in the engine and say hangs from the ceiling, then the origin's kind of going to be in the wrong place for that. So I don't really know what to do. I'm going to get up, just while looking at this, I'm going to get up my board again, just so I can, I don't know, maybe something will jump out at me. Let's decrease that so we don't need the whole thing. Sorry, I'm just looking at the Twitch achievements quickly. Right, sorry, got a bit sidetracked there. It's getting to the point where like I'm kind of a bit fried, but I will try and push through and try and get this fixed, because it's really important that I do figure this out. Just so I can move on to other things. It's not that big of a deal in and of itself, but I do want to try and get this working. I think this should all be fine. So basically what we're doing is, let's say we're taking this point up here, we know it's 1, 3. The object default spawn will be up here, by the way. So what we're doing is we're shifting all collision points down by that amount, giving us an offset. What we aim to do is translate that so that when the collision boxes are actually rotated round, they have this updated position and the highlights are in the right place. Oh, this is a nightmare, because everything should be working, I think. Unless there's some weird interactions going on that I'm oblivious to. One interesting test, actually, would be to see if the overlap mode is working properly. So I can't place there. Can't place there. Yeah, so a normal day in game dev, pretty much. Nice to see you again, by the way. Thank you. This problem is kind of starting to get on my nerves now. Just alright, let's revisit the logic now that you've joined me. Maybe spot something that I don't, or something makes sense. I don't know. Maybe I'm hoping re-explaining it will show me where I'm going wrong. Okay, so case 2 is correct. We know that this works for a fact. This is definitely working. That we don't need to worry about. It's these ones which we need to worry about. So the 90 degree and the 270 degree rotations, which are starting to break slightly. So what we're doing here is we're saying the x-axis is equal to the y. Yeah, that's correct. And then if we take any other point, that should be the same as well. So with this one, the x-axis is equal to the y. Yeah. With this one, which would be so the x-axis again would be equal to the y. So that's correct. So x equals y. That's fine. Y needs to equal believe it was the max minus the x. Or is it the, sorry, y needs to equal the x, the max minus the x, yeah. Though that might be wrong, let me just double check this. Yep, y is equal to the max minus the x. Does it hold true for everything else though? Y is equal to the max minus the x. Again, that makes sense. Let's try it for different things. This one here, it's 0, 3. This one is... Sorry, 1, 3. This one again, yeah, that's fine. X being equal to... Do some more tests. I'm going to take a bunch of numbers. So when rotating 90 degrees, let's choose a random point. Let's choose the origin point again. So it's 0, 2, which translates to 2, 4. So that kind of proves the theory that I have. Let's take another. Let's take the one to the upper right of that origin. That's 1, 3. Gets translated to 3, 3. Let's take another. Let's take the one that is at the bottom. That's 1, 0. It becomes 0, 3. Let's take the one in the end corner. That's 4, 4, and then it becomes 0, 4. Sorry, it becomes 4, 0. I thought I did something wrong there. There we go. So yeah, I think this kind of holds up. It's the x is always equal to the y in the previous one. Yep, there's no changes there. And the y is always equal to 4 minus whatever's in the corner. Yeah, okay. So this is always accurate. I presume it's the same the other way around. Let me just double check I've actually done that correctly for both collisions and for prop origin. So temp(x) is equal to the y is equal to max minus the x, and same again. So in this case we're taking a single coordinate and we're changing its location, and in this one we're changing where we're checking. So we're not actually swapping values around. Although I suppose we could do it that way. So yeah, let me just check that doing it this way around is actually valid, and I shouldn't be instead swapping around all of the positions. Noticed actually my chat doesn't seem to be working properly. Oh no, it is. Just very faint. Okay, that should all be working. I don't know why it's not. So I'm going to draw some debug spheres to highlight different locations. So, to draw the debug sphere, what we're going to want to do is highlight the X ink minus the origin. Oh no, it's not under this, is it? It's props.get origin, get prop origin, there we go. And then we want to put in the prop ID, which we already have. The axis, which I believe we already have as well. Yeah, prop rotation. Oh no, sorry. The axis would be this is just the X, so that would just be 0. And then the rotation would be, well, we've got prop rotation there, so let's use that. And then again, we kind of want to do the same thing. Oh, but this isn't the full calculation, actually. We need the Oh, I really hope this coffee kicks in and gives me a boost. There's too many variables to deal with at the moment. I wish I was working on a bit of a simpler problem right now. Anything to do with positioning is a nightmare. It's really stressful. I need the actual origin that I'm looking at currently. Bad at spatial reasoning. I mean, yeah, I mean normally I'm quite good at spatial reasoning, but it's when dealing with like lots of variables at the same time that my brain just begins to break. Like I can come up with the solution, generally speaking, quite quickly. It's actually the implementing it that I really struggle with. So I could tell you approximately how to do something, but not actually do it. Which is obviously not great. I'm kind of doing something I really shouldn't be in here, but I mean, it worked. For the props dot, would it be props dot prop data storage dot x. But I need to know what one to actually access, so it would be that would be prop data storage. Would it be? Would it be prop data storage? No, it would be. I think. Double check. Yeah. Hold up. Yeah, so this should be. Oh, what would it be? What am I accessing? I think I have the ID for it. I think it's prop ID. Oh no. Object ID is what I've got. Here we go. Too many conflicting variables. Kind of wish in some of these functions I'd kept consistent. I did get quite consistent later on. But like initially I wasn't very consistent in what I named my variables between functions, so it got a bit confusing. Blank. And it should be plus the increment minus the origin. Refactoring features, it kinda does, yeah, but you still have to do a lot of the legwork, obviously, and like renaming your variables and stuff. So I guess I could just do like renames and things like that, but it's more that I'm just getting confused by other stuff than anything else. But let's rename this quickly to prop instance ID. There we go. Makes things a bit easier to read now. But yeah, let's see if this debugging stuff comes back with what I think it should. And if it comes back with something different, then I know that at least something's working. Not doing what. Oh, no, that's not the mode I want to be in. Has this even compiled? It might not have done. Oh, that needs updating to ZInc. There we go. That makes sense. Probably showing them all in the wrong place. Let's try this. That's not doing what it should. I'm drawing a debug sphere at the position of the X position plus the increment minus the origin. Oh, of course, I need to times it all by the like voxel width and stuff. Just so that it's actually relative to world space and not at the start. There we go. So this finally should actually show up in the right place now. Okay. No, apparently not. Is it showing up anywhere else by any chance? If I highlight there, can I see it maybe at the bottom anywhere? Yeah, it's all... Is that recompiled? It might not have done. It's frustrating that it doesn't. Oh, it's just timesing that last part, that's why. That makes sense. Let's wrap this entire thing in brackets. Actually, one times the entire thing, not just the origin portion. There we go. Alright, this should be the final time. There we go. That's showing what I expect it to. Okay, just let me work out why this is. So I think both of my functions are actually correct. I don't think they are wrong in any particular way. Need to work out why this is happening. I really need another quick toilet break, but I'll literally be a minute, so I won't bother putting a sign up. But yeah, just so you know that I'm just running off quickly. I'll be back in just a second. Right, I am back. Put the camera back on, there we go. Okay, so let me take my presumed shape and let's see if I can do some quick mental math and actually test what I think is going on. So for this one we have that L shape that I built. So this is translating correctly, so it's putting all of this row on the bottom, so the x is equal to the y, and then it's setting this to be the opposite, I believe. Let me just double check that. So if this was rotated around, I'd expect it to have these three facing me. Yep, that's fine. Let's work out where the origin would be. So it should be on the top of the L. So currently the origin is 0. Sorry, it's 2, 0. So I'd expect the origin then to be. What would it be? Not sure actually. Let me have a look. Let's open up my graph paper thing again. So let's do 3 by 3. Origin is here. Oh, I've just realised the camera's covering that up. I'll move this over. So having an updated box. Expect it to be here. Yeah, it is quite handy actually. I've only just discovered it today, so good alternative to drawing boxes in Paint every time. Which is what I have been doing up to now, so I think actually I'll save this link. So, I mean, let's say, yeah, that was the origin, and I had these boxes occupied, which I do. It would translate to, or it should translate to this. So to display this, we would spawn this in here, and we take the XYZ, which would be at this point. Take away the X origin position and add boxes position. Is that what I'm doing? Adding the boxes position? Yeah. Okay, that's fine. And then here, this being the origin, we're not taking away anything because it ends up being 0, 0. Or it should do at least. And then we're adding these positions as well. So under my system, let me make sure this does actually become 0, 0. So we take, what's the formula I've worked out so far? So we take the Y, which in this case is 0. Yep, that's fine. And then we take the max minus the X, which I believe is what I am doing. Y is equal to the max minus the X. So max minus the max, yeah, that ends up at 0. So the origin being 0, we're not taking anything away and we're just adding the increments. So that should work, but it isn't. Let me check the logic for these positions quickly. So the X should equal the Y, it does, and the Y should equal the max minus the X, which is 0. Yeah, so these all end up in the correct place. Everything is ending up in the correct location from what I can tell, it's just something is going wrong. Which really isn't helpful. I reckon it's because, rather than actually swap them round, I'm changing where I'm looking. Rather than changing around all of the array elements, I'm simply changing where I'm looking here. Maybe I need to change that. Yeah, I think it needs to be inverted. So let me put this in here and that in there, maybe? Or something to that effect. At least it might end up in roughly the right place. See? I think I'm going to have to do it properly though and put a for loop in there. That's fine. And it's kind of doing the right thing, it's just going in the wrong direction. Guess it works though. I think that's working, it's just if I remember correctly, Unreal Engine is... what is it? It's not a... is it right or left-handed? I can't remember. Traditional software is left-handed, and I think Unreal Engine works in the opposite direction. But the axes are inverted. Yeah, so I think this actually works now. After all of that, eh? I'm going to do nested for loops though, so that I can just be sure that it's actually doing the right thing. So this should be int I, this would be max object width. And then what I'm going to do is actually swap them around. So copying here, there we go, and then do temporary 0 instead, or temporary I. Or would this be too complicated? Probably would be too complicated. I don't know, maybe not. Let's give it a go. So what I'm essentially doing, rather than... so with the prop origin thing, I'm actually changing the supposed placement of the coordinate that we're looking at. What I want to do is basically do the same by swapping around the positions of all of the collision spaces, rather than just changing where we're looking at within that collision box. Because I think that'll actually give me the right solution. So So just to double check my reasoning, let me open up that web page again. So for a 90-degree rotation, we want x to equal y and y to equal max minus x. So we need to do temp array Wait, no, this isn't right at all. Temp, and then that would be oh, so I actually need to do it for all of the spaces. These fours actually in there. This is getting quite messy, sorry, I'll clean this up in a second. Okay, so change this to Z increment. Oh, this would be even more complicated, so I'd need to hold temporary variables for everything. Yeah, this is way too much work. I will just tweak it until it is working. So I'll do what I was doing before, but I'll just make sure that it's actually going in the right direction. Sometimes doing things properly is just far too much effort, but at least I know it works. I guess your definition of properly is whether or not it actually does what you want it to do, so I'm just not entirely sure it is doing what I want it to do, which is the only problem. So yeah, it's rotating in the wrong direction. I need to work out, so I actually need to invert the two axes. My definition of properly is maintainable. Yeah, I mean that's fair. Maintainability is quite important. I'd say, thankfully, with this kind of code that I'm doing at the moment, with each feature that I'm adding on, they're kind of independent from one another to an extent. This needs both axes inverted. You know what, I think this was actually working properly before, as annoying as that might be, and I think I can just get away with updating the origin code to reflect the changes that I've just made, but in reverse. So we need to undo all of this, replace that there, get that back to that point. So I think this is actually all working fine because the shapes are lining up. So let me just recompile that and double check. And then if that is the problem, I'll update the origin code. And just mess with that until that's correct instead. I've been stuck doing the same thing, going around in circles for far too long, but I'm hoping that I can just kind of fix it now by just brute forcing it, really. So yeah, so that's working. I just need to set the origin slightly differently. It's going in the direction that I'd hope it would, but I need to... What exactly is it even doing? Why is it going to the topmost corner? It shouldn't be doing that. I don't know, let's try swapping around these, maybe? Maybe that's the issue. Maybe because of the like the type of coordinate set I'm using, maybe this is actually the problem here and not the other thing. So let's try that. It's always possible that this is the issue. It'd be kind of annoying if it was, since I've been working on it for so long, but at this point I don't really care, I just need it done. It's fine. Okay, that seems to be correct. Also seems to be correct. Again seems to be correct. I just hope that it works for other types of shape. Obviously these all have their stuff centered, so there's no real things to test here. I'm not really sure. Not really sure why it's behaving this way, to be honest, because I've done all of the logic in my head, and as far as I can tell, the other way that I was doing it should work fine. But I'm presuming it's because I'm using a left-handed coordinate set rather than a right-handed coordinate set, which I guess would kind of make sense, but it still kind of baffles me a little bit. All I'm hoping now is that the brush overlapping feature still works properly, which it appears to, which is good. Yeah, this all seems to be working okay. I guess if it works, it works. I'm not going to complain, to be honest. Right. It's not how I expected it to work. I think I'm doing something weird somewhere, which is making this implementation work but the other one not. Now I can remove this weird L shape that I made and just revert this back to what it was before. I want the origin to be centered again. So set this back to 1, 1, 1, 1. And then the origin on that shape to be the same as all the others. There we go. Okay, so that's something working. So I'll just double check that I've reset the shape properly. And I'll bring up the Jira board on placement rotations, kind of mentally check this off. Visual rotations are built. Collision rotations are now also built. I also need to check that placing them in the scene works, and then once that's done I will move it into the built category. Just double check those are correct. Yeah, that seems to be fine. Awesome. Right, now let's see if I can actually place rocks' various rotations in the scene. One thing I want to update is there's a bit of code which I'm using in the editor camera to rotate stuff, but what I didn't realise was, because I'm using what's called an axis input in Unreal. If you so much as touch that button, it kind of increments it multiple times, so I only want a single button press to increment it one space. We'll leave its spin current selection, so what I need to change this to is increment current selection and decrement current selection. So I basically just need to break this up into two functions. And then I'll copy this, change this to an increment. There we go. I'm just going to delete this function definition just so that I can get rid of it. Let's create function definitions for these two. And same for increment. Go back into the CPP. Just going to copy this. This is going to be minus equals 1 instead of plus equals. Break this, so copy this out. Cut this from here, change that to a plus, cut this from that one from here, yeah, there we go. And then do the same with the else statement. So put that into both sections there. We're wanting to minus equals 1. So rather than taking in a number and incrementing or decrementing it that way and checking both bounds, we're just decrementing it here and then incrementing it down here. And then removing the unnecessary bounds checks from each section. Sorry for the bike noise. Honestly, you rarely get people driving down here that fast because of how narrow our road is, so I'm surprised they're even doing it. Right, there we go. So now we can get rid of this crap here, but also it will mean updating the input link that we have at the top. So I'm going to find action. Yeah, sorry about it being loud, I do apologise. I don't know if I've got audio clipping enabled. I might do. So basically what I'm doing now is setting up the input conditions for this, but then I'll need to hook it into the editor as well, so just bear with me 1 second. Yeah, I'm glad it's not deafening. Like for me it was really loud, so I'm not surprised you could hear it quite loud on stream. Decrement current rotation, increment current rotation, decrement, increment. So now I need to set these up in the editor. So I've done this plenty of times before, so you guys should probably know what I'm doing by now. just opening up project settings, going to input. I want to remove that old one that I had before, which was spin current selection. So let's get rid of this. And it was Z and X that this was bound to. So I'm going to add some additional axis mappings, going to add 2 of them. I'm going to add in decrement and increment. Change this to, I want Z to be, okay. And this one I want X. So that should be everything I need to do. Let me just test this, let me compile this code and see if I can get it to work. So in theory, if I go into prop mode, I should be able to place stuff down. I want to check the rotations work though, so I need to find something that I can test the orientation of. Let's try the rock again. So this is normal. I probably should have done them next to, I'll do them next to their shapes so I can just quickly check that it is working. Increment again. Increment one last time. And then I'll do the same but in the opposite direction. Actually, I'll increment one more time just to make sure that it is resetting properly. Yeah, seems to be. So let's decrement twice, decrement again, one more time, and one more time to check that it's going in the other way. Yeah, great, so that's all working now. So placement rotations are now implemented. So props can now have their own rotations based on 90 degrees. Just to add a bit of visual variety into the scene, and also they can rotate their collision bounds as well. So collision bounds can be updated on the engine side when it comes to things like AI navigation and stuff like that. So obviously the things themselves will have an engine collision, so they'll have the UE4 collision box, which will be an actual physical collision box that you can interact with, the physics system will be able to interact with, that kind of thing. But then the collision system that I'm talking about is the one that I've built, so that AI knows how to navigate around through the voxel system based on where props are located in the world. So the voxel collision mesh, the voxel navigation mesh that I'm going to build will use the prop system as reference to know where certain blockages are at any given time. And in theory, depending on how I build it, the AI will be able to use certain props to make the decisions based on where it's navigating to. So let's say there's a door on that's saved in memory on the prop side, and the AI knows that it has to get through that one particular space to get to where it wants to go. It can see that there's a door there. Either it can choose to reroute if it doesn't have the resources to get through that door, or it can say, oh, I've got a key for that door, let me simply walk through it, basically. Or activate the state that it needs to be to clear that area. Which is why I've spent so long implementing these collisions that line up with the voxel system, so that not only can you see them in the editor, which is nice, but also you're able to, the AI is able to interact with them basically based on voxel positions and that kind of thing. So it's actually quite an essential feature to get in. I'm quite happy that it's complete. Did go a bit over my time budget, so I did want to get it done on Friday, but due to the issues that I was running into, I didn't quite manage to get it finished. I can close that down now, and I can move this over to the build column. That's just another feature that is now complete. Just since I've got a bit of time at the end now, what I'm going to do is just run you guys through again what I was talking about earlier, but I think the mic wasn't working. So Insomnia Games Festival has been cancelled because of coronavirus. Surprise, surprise. So what we've had to do is we've had to update our plans. we are no longer going to the one next month. We're actually going to the one, I believe it's in August. So these are going to probably be pushed back. Although Josh, I might leave these in here so that we can make travel arrangements in advance. But what I'm going to focus on this week, besides one of the additional editor features, there's a bug fix which I need to do. I need to implement physics as well, and voxel culling. Besides doing that, I need to work on getting merchandise for these events, employee clothing for these events. Josh needs to work on the basis for the Kickstarter campaign, but that's been pushed back now into August since we want to launch our Kickstarter around the same time. And let's see, so I don't know if there's anything else that's a priority right now, but that's basically just a quick overview of what kind of stuff we're doing at the moment. The next system that's going to be worked on in the roadmap is, as you can see, we're still in January, March. I think there's how many days left, so but just over 2 weeks from today. I'm hoping to get that bug fix in, which will stop out of bounds array checking happening with the prop system. That's quite important, so we don't want editor crashes when people are placing stuff up against the edge of the world. There is the physics that needs implementing, so whenever a prop is removed or added to the terrain, it needs to disable or enable the physics system, which then just basically allows it to be free floating. It needs to have its own collisions, it needs to have its own like weight properties, friction properties, that kind of thing, which will be something that I can configure in code rather than something that I assign to each prefab, I think, because that way people can edit it through text files, which is something which is quite important. So yeah, so those two things, so the bug fix, physics. The next thing, I think, let's see if there's any, if it's listed directly in here. So yeah, the physics is quite important. I think that's it for now. The next major thing that I'm going to be working on once those two things are finished are getting things like the prerequisite system built for actions. So we obviously want things to be interactable. So I need to create the system that will enable that functionality, basically. So I need to be able to run a line of code on a prop and have an action be carried out based on that. And I'm going to create a system that's quite flexible so that any number of actions and any number of prerequisites can interact with each other freely. I don't have to manually program in those behaviors every time. So I'll be using, in C++, I will be using, I believe it's called downcasting, or it's the inverse to that one, where basically I'm treating everything as if it's the same object, and every action object will have its own like play function, if you will, similar to like how the UE4 scripts work, where they all have a run function, and then anything will be able to call that play function externally. So I need to develop the system for that. It really shouldn't take me too long. I also want to investigate a play system as well, but I think that is part of the scene sprint that we have. Yeah, so a play mode will be part of the scene sprint. So that will come later. That will come after the prefab system is built. And I'll be working on that in parallel with the AI system as well. Okay, so thanks for watching again. Sorry that this has taken so long to get to what should have been a relatively simple fix, but at least now it's working. I will get this uploaded by, I believe, Wednesday. Depends on if I can get Josh to edit them in time. So this will be up on YouTube. And I'm also working on a long blog and a long update blog. So I didn't do them last week because of the blog issues I was having. and I've decided to scrap this week's ones rather than doing 2. I'm just putting more effort into the ones that I'm doing this week. And actually, what I've decided to do for last week's blog, I've decided to expand upon it to be kind of like a 6-month company and engine review. You can kind of see the history of where we've been, where we're going in the future, where we're at the moment, and hopefully it should be quite a nice summary of our up-to-date progress. And I'll do another one of these kind of long-form blog posts reviewing our roadmap closer to the Kickstarter launch as well, so that people have a point of reference for who we are, what we do, and what we plan to do next, rather than just looking at the weekly update blogs, which are not a very good summary of all of the progress that's been made. So yeah, thanks for watching. I will see you next time, and thanks Thankulum for the congrats. But yeah, see ya.